Forsen's good down experiences. Check out this shit. I'm pretty sure I know the game. Has a lot of
the last few years have not been kind to Bethesda. It wasn't that long ago that they were being praised as one of the best developers in the industry.
Why they were
and
never
Todd
great.
Howard, the mighty God Howard.
Excuse me? Why they were never great?
Fast forward a few years, and here we are. Players deceived, refunds denied, helmets moulding. First it was the paid mods, then the ungodly launch of Fallout 76, and then everything else. Fans could not believe what they were seeing. Bethesda had fallen. This downward spiral was free entertainment for some, a heartbreaking loss of $60 for others. Not only a loss of $60, and possibly $300 in some years of your life if you happen to purchase one of the mouldy red power armor helmets, but also the loss of one of the last decent game developers. It was a sad day. But wait, were
that
Bethesda
statue just got fucking beheaded.
Sad to purchase one of the mouldy red power armor helmets, but also the loss of one of the last decent game developers. It was a sad day. But wait, were Bethesda ever the saints they're often remembered as? There's no doubt that they made some good games over the years, but the old Bethesda also had a big part in creating the modern microtransaction market, dabbled out with some harsh treatment of a licensed company, indirectly causing 30-odd layoffs as a result, and a few petty lawsuits over brand protection, and you've got some pretty dodgy moves from Todd and the boys. But before we get into those, something I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's no secret that game director Todd Howard has invested pretty heavily into his speech.
It allows us to have 16 times the detail.
The man's lies are infamous. The most famous example of Todd's sly tongue was probably at E3 last year, when he made some very interesting promises for the latest Fallout.
As a matter of fact, you'll never even see a server when you play.
But these false promises were never exclusive to Fallout 76.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this. Stop leeching off that other
guy's
guy's
Todd's
content.
flies all the way back to
Whatever,
Oblivion.
the Fallout
In 2005,
guy
he told everyone that Oblivion's NPC AI was radiant and unscripted.
Let's take a look at the other side of the game, our new rating AI system. These NPCs are not scripted.
May you rest in peace.
People were excited for the day that they could jump into the game and witness this space age AI for themselves.
I forgot.
But unfortunately, the NPCs were not quite as intelligent as Todd had suggested.
Oblivion.
The fact that they all look like melted cheese strings also didn't help much. 1 year after Oblivion released, Bethesda purchased the rights to the Fallout IP, and Todd announced that Fallout 3 would have 200 different endings.
As of last week, we're over 200 endings. That is not an exaggeration.
In reality, there'd be 3. A few different ways to go about getting them, and then lots of slight variation with the ending slideshow, depending on your karma and side quest choices during the game. After having just perfected AI, Todd now looked to improve quests. They would also become radiant, meaning that they could be redeemed infinitely, until the end of time. Once again, this was technically correct, but these quests ended up being what was essentially the exact same quests, but in different areas of the map. He also mentioned a local economy system that could be affected by the player damaging a town's production lines. If you actually Google this, multiple forum posts can be found, written by a handful of people spending their first hours of Skyrim burning down a sawmill in an attempt to cripple the local economy. It never worked. Also, this never happened. Then, during E3 2015, Todd made the bold claim that Fallout 4 just worked.
All of this just works. It works, it actually works perfectly.
And he would of course go on to continue the trend at E3 last year for Fallout 76.
16 times the detail. All new rendering, lighting, and landscape technology. Of course you can play this solo. You'll be who you want, you'll never even see a server when you play.
People were so fucking hyped for this shit.
Some argue that Todd's long list of lies over the years were features that were going to be in the game, but
and I gave it a good fucking shot, right?
Whichever way you look at it, for the last 14 years, Todd has had a very special way with words.
10 hours?
Who knows what Todd has planned for their next release. Back again to 2006, and Bethesda had just released Oblivion. It was their best-selling game at the time, selling almost 2 million copies in the first 20 days of release, and things were looking pretty good. It didn't just sell well either. Oblivion was pretty much praised by critics across the board, and believe it or not, even praised for its graphics at the time. A very foreign concept for any modern Bethesda title. Even though the NPCs weren't exactly what was promised, they still worked. Occasionally. But anyway, the game sold well and people liked it. But then, everything changed. Just a month after launch, they released something for $2.50. Something so small, something so trivial, that they wouldn't hear the end of it for years to come. A few pieces of armour for your in-game horse. The armour didn't even protect the horse, it just made it look a bit cooler. Making DLC like this at the time wasn't very common, especially for a game as big as Oblivion, and people were not happy. But Bethesda kept on releasing these pricey DLCs, although the rest were more reasonable. Other developers took note of what Todd and the team had pulled off here, and here we are today. Fallout 3 and the original Skyrim missed out on the Oblivion treatment, but these microtransactions would later return in the form of the Creation Club for Fallout 4 and Skyrim Remastered. One of the first items on sale was $3 horse armour. Also, a fun fact about the Creation Club, when new mods were added and updates, every mod was installed directly onto your hard drive, regardless of whether you actually purchased it or not. When you actually went to buy the mod, you were just paying for a tiny ESP file that unlocked the mod files. This bloated everyone's hard drive with multiple gigabyte mod updates every month, and with a little know-how, you could create these ESP files yourself. Some more ingenuity from the development team at Bethesda. One of the immediate thoughts anyone has after hearing the very word Bethesda is the onslaught of bugs thrown your way the moment the game boots. Just type in Bethesda bugs on YouTube and you'll find hundreds of compilations of these small technical hiccups. The most common bugs include dodgy AI, corrupted game saves, game crashes, texture errors, model errors, physics errors, clipping errors, flying enemies, sinking enemies, and muscle man. And that's not even really scratching the surface.
Sometimes it doesn't just work.
You don't say. They also forgot to cut out some voiceover mistakes in Oblivion.
I heard that thieves broke into the Arcane University, the Imperial Legion compound, and the temple all on the same night. Wait a minute, let me do that one again. I heard that thieves broke into the Arcane...
That and the character.
That's so funny. Is that still in the game? That's fucking hilarious, dude.
Swapping voices halfway through their dialogue.
I could be banished for telling you.
Okay, I'll show you.
The games are buggy, and Fallout 76 was of course no different. I've actually read multiple Reddit posts claiming that Bethesda's recent patches for the game are bringing in more bugs than the ones they're fixing. There's also an audio bug that has been fixed multiple times at this point, and some people are still saying it's in the game. Bugs are a consistent feature of Bethesda's games, and many people in turn blame the engine the games run on. As of 2019, Bethesda's games run on an engine that's core is now actually old enough to drink, as pointed out by a gent in one of my comment sections. I've looked into the whole game engine argument, and the common consensus is that the age of an engine isn't necessarily a problem, providing you've got a team of software engineers who can efficiently update and optimize it. I mean, Rockstar's game engine for GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2 is a heavily upgraded version of an engine that was used for their 2006 ping pong game. The engine's still perfectly capable. That's right, this game right here is running on an engine from this game here. Well, how the f*** do you explain this shit, Todd? Judging by their last two games, Bethesda doesn't quite have the same level of proficiency in their software development team. The current engine being used, the Creation engine, is a heavily upgraded version of the 1997 NetImmerse engine, which was the core engine used to make every game from Morrowind to Fallout 76. Others claim that Bethesda don't put enough work into bug testing, but regardless of how the bugs actually get in there, the worst part about them is that they always end up staying, because Bethesda rarely ever bother to patch them out. There are still hundreds of known bugs in Skyrim, and even the recent Skyrim Remastered, and modders have been left to do Bethesda's dirty work. Bethesda know these bugs exist, but they still just sort of stand there like, that sucks. Oh well. So basically, for the last 14 years, every single one of Bethesda's games has been a massive buggy mess, left to be fixed for free by avid fans who just wanted to go 5 minutes in their game without being launched into the stratosphere. Apparently that was too much to ask. Some see it as the game as being made more accessible and efficient. Others call it dumbing down and streamlining. Whichever way you look at it, you can't really argue that Todd hasn't been flushing away features for the last 14 years. A good example of this is the development of Fallout's progression system. Fallout 3's progression had depth and was pretty consistent to the original two Fallouts, including the special attributes, skills, and perks. Then for Bethesda's next Fallout, Todd went with the less is more approach and thought, let's integrate skills and perks into the special attribute table. For Fallout 76, Todd just said, you know what, just give him a pack of cards. Okay. Compared to the older Fallouts, Fallout 4 also had much simpler dialogue, so much so that 2 of the most popular mods for Fallout 4 actually reverted the dialogue tree to the original format and removed the characters' voiceover lines. Also, the dialogue choices themselves pretty much equated to saying yes 3 times with different layers of paint, and then the option to ask a question, as opposed to the much more complex New Vegas style of dialogue. The repair feature was removed, there was no karma system, and side quests no longer added to the ending slideshow. There also wasn't much room to play as an evil character either, which was a staple in previous releases, and so on. People felt like there was a lot missing. Although we all paint him as the villain, Todd isn't really the one who pulls the strings. The real decisions are made by the people at ZeniMax Media, who are the parent company of Bethesda Softworks, who are the parent company of Bethesda Game Studios. Ever since ZeniMax was set up in 1999, it's been caught up in a number of lawsuits, many of them quite questionable. For starters, Bethesda Softworks started out in the 80s developing sports games, with a game called Gridiron in 1986 being the game the company was built on. One of the key players behind the early Bethesda games was a guy called Chris Weaver, and after the success of Bethesda's early games, Chris approached a lawyer named Robert A. Altman. Together they co-founded ZeniMax in 1999, with Weaver in charge of the games and Altman in charge of the business. 3 years later, executives gathered round the high table at ZeniMax and voted to flush Chris out of the business. A pretty cutthroat decision considering it was the man who partially built the company. And then there was Bethesda's contract with Obsidian Entertainment for Fallout New Vegas. After the immediate success of Fallout 3, Bethesda wanted to capitalise on another Fallout release. They licensed Obsidian, a development team comprised of ex-Fallout 1 and 2 developers, to create a spin-off Fallout on Bethesda's flawless game engine. Obsidian were then given 18 short months to develop the game. They were paid up front by Bethesda for the development, and signed a contract that meant they only receive royalties on the game if it reached a score of 85 on Metacritic. New Vegas fell short of the royalty requirement by 1 point, hitting 84, and thus no royalties were sent their way. That, coupled with Microsoft cancelling a 7-month deep project with them, ultimately resulted in 20 to 30 layoffs from Obsidian staff. Bethesda has also been extremely aggressive in their marketing and branding practices, waving around hefty lawsuits to companies and fans over brand protection. They threatened Mojang with a lawsuit in 2012, due to Mojang naming a game Scrolls, and more recently, a small indie developer had problems because their game was titled Pray for the Gods. In both cases, the names had to be changed. Just over a year ago, Bethesda released Fallout 76, and the lid finally blew. A decade of frustrations and complaints, all neatly packaged into one $60, barely functioning online experience. Fallout 76 had it all. The lies, bugs, crashes, microtransactions, awful PR. It was glorious. Todd's finest creation.
How much?
His magnum opus. But people weren't happy with
they
it.
don't release
and now,
that shit.
over a year after its release,
ask how
people
much
are somehow
money you
even
think they
less
lost
happy with
on
it. Bethesda has
Fallout
made some good
76
stuff over
after
the years,
refunds
but you'd be wrong
and
to say
such.
that they were ever the god-tier developer they're often remembered as. If you look
But
at the
they
last
probably don't
decade and a
release that.
half's worth of actions from the company, their recent actions seem to be reasonable progression. And as much as the executives at ZeniMax are to
Wait, they
blame,
didn't?
Bethesda's PR and development teams really don't help themselves. The infamous tales of how they handled the canvas bags, the refund denials, the banning of innocent players, and some of this stuff is still going on. A few weeks ago, Bethesda banned one of Fallout 76's most loyal players, who'd gone out of his way to develop an online interactive map of the game, and also found and reported bugs to Bethesda. Also, releasing a video called Save Player 1 a year before they took their traditionally single-player game online wasn't the brightest idea. But Bethesda will learn from this though, right? How can they not learn from this whole thing? Well, if recent events are anything to go by, it doesn't look like they have much interest in putting out the flames currently engulfing their public relations. And if Fallout First is anything to go by, it looks like they're actually having a good time making it worse. But the hopeful fans of this very confused company will continue to watch from the sidelines as they run about rapidly, throwing atomic shop sales and dodgy bug patches around until the next grand work is finally revealed, with one man and one man alone, knowing whether it will be worthwhile or just another big fat lie.
Well, that game is gonna come out in like 2022 or something. Thank you. And then we have Skyrim 6. No, sorry. Skyrim 2. Elder Scrolls 6. Should be good.
Welcome to Uganda.
I mean, as long as it's not multiplayer, right? As long as it's not multiplayer, we should be fucking good. I mean, it's gonna be like a bug fiesta. No, that's obvious, but still, they're quite enjoyable, I think. No matter what he says.